So I told you guys that I'd show you what I do on a daily basis, and this is some of the equipment that I use when I'm out crop scouting. What we use these for is being a lot faster at covering a lot of ground. So I can cover about 4,000 acres in a day, which makes me a lot faster than walking, where I can cover maybe 2 or 3. So we use these systems, we take a lot of pictures, we stitch them together into a map, and we actually deliver that to the farmer so that they're able to put out fertilizer where they need it. That allows them to grow more crops and get more yield out of each acre. And the whole point of precision agriculture is to try and get the most yield out of each acre that we can.
When you identify a problem area, what comes next?
So we use a system we call the 3D analysis system. It stands for discovery, diagnosis, and documentation. So we start by discovering that problem like you were talking about while we're up in the sky. Then we come back down and we look at that problem area while we're standing in the field right next to it. And I use a software called Pocket Agronomist to try and identify the problem. So if there's a disease or a nutrient deficiency or a particular set of weeds that are in the crop, I point my phone at it and it tries to identify what the problem is. Then I go and document it, that third D. So after we diagnose it, we want to document it so we can share it with the farmer, tell him what disease he might have, what insects might be eating his corn or his particular crop that he's growing, and then he can hopefully do a protective measure for it. So whether that's a pesticide or a herbicide or a crop protection product.
There's an app that can help identify what's wrong in the field.
Absolutely. We've been working on that for a really long time. We have a group of agronomists who have taken pictures for 25 years, 30 years, their whole career. And we've taken those pictures and we've put them into categories and started training our software on how to identify them. So what that means is when I take a picture with my phone, it's running it against all those images or all those pictures that we've taken and catalog them and then identifies them.
What is an agronomist?
So an agronomist is kind of like a doctor, but for plants. So just like you get sick, so do crops like corn and soybeans. And they need an agronomist to come out and diagnose and prescribe a remedy.
Does a plant have to be a certain age to identify a problem with the app?
So it'll depend on the problem that we're trying to address, but when they're really young, a lot of times there's not a problem on the plant. So as soon as it can show it on a leaf where there's, for example, a lesion on it or an insect is starting to eat, that's the point where we can start identifying it. We can also identify it later in the season as well, as those leaves get bigger and those lesions get larger.
How does the app know what disease the plant has?
That's a great question, and it's pretty complicated what happens in the background, but we use what's called a convolutional neural network. And all that means is it's a fancy name for a software that works like your brain. So what we're doing is we're showing it a bunch of images, and we're training it or educating it what it's seeing. So I took lots of pictures, showed it to the app, and it remembers everything because it's a computer, so it can save it in its hard drive. Just like when you read something, you try and remember that story. I'm trying to show it a story so it can go out and learn it, and then address it, identify it, and tell us what's going on.
Is there an optimum altitude that the drone should be flying at?
It's another good question. There's an optimal altitude for each job that we're doing. So when you look at a field like we're in right now, these crops are only about 4 or 5 inches tall, so we want to fly it really low so we can see a lot of detail. When they get taller, we can fly higher. So we'll fly 400 feet in the air, which is where we want to fly so that we stay away from planes that are up in the sky flying above us.
So how'd you get your start in flying drones?
So that's a great question. I actually started because I really loved the technology. So I actually didn't know what I was going to do with drones, but I knew I liked flying them. And then I realized pretty quickly that it takes really good pictures and we could use it for farming.
This sounds like a really cool job, Mitchell. And do you get to fly in drones like this every day?
I don't get to fly every day. We fly a lot in the summer. Most of the time I get to work with farmers. Sometimes I'm in the office working on paperwork. We do all kinds of stuff. Every day is a little bit different. We work with people all over the country. So whether they're part of a university or whether they're part of a farming network, we're trying to work with them to either collect data so we can learn more about what's going on in their fields, so we can analyze their crops better. But the people that we're working with are just like you and I. They've gone to school for this kind of stuff, and then they go out and they share that knowledge with us. And we're trying to learn it so that we can share it with the rest of people so we can get more people involved in agriculture. You guys want to fly the drone?
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to take off. And there's us.